Alrighty folks, before we start our 1990s presentation, we would like to give you some brief facts about the 1980s. The 1980s had the worst economic crash since the Great Depression of the 1920s and 30s. Through this, people were able to band together and try and make the best out of every situation. Perseverance and determination were the center point of many values for people in America at that time. But this also led to some social rebellion. Not everybody wanted to go with the average norms of trying to persevere and bring the best out of every situation. Many people wanted to be different. Very similar to the 1990s. These two decades are easy to relate to each other because of the similarities in the social climate and how the societies worked at that time. Just like with any decade, there's a fairly long list of unfortunate events that occurred. The 90s had its fair share as well, which we will soon find out. But what can we learn from the 1980s that can help us understand the 1990s? That hard times do bring out the better. And just like when the Berlin Wall did eventually come down in 1989, we start off the 1990s decade with a little bit of hope and some happiness. And on that note, how about a word from our former president, Bill Clinton?
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
Something grabs a hold of me tightly, flow like a harpoon daily and nightly. Will it ever stop? Yo, I don't know. Turn off the lights and I'll glow. To the extreme, I rock a mic like a vandal. Light up a stage and wax a chump like a candle. Dance, crush a speaker that booms. I'm killing your brain like a poisonous mushroom. Deadly, when I play a dope melody. Anything less than the best is a felony. Love it or leave it, you better gain weight. You better hit bullseye, the kid don't play. If there was a problem, yo, I'll solve it. Check out the hook while my DJ revolves it. Now that the party is jumping, with the bass kicked in and the Vegas are pumping, quick to the point, no faking. Cooking MCs like a pound of bacon, burning them, being quick and nimble. I go crazy when I hear a cymbal and a hi-hat with a souped up tempo. I'm on a roll, it's time to go solo.
Alright folks, so music in the 1990s, for people, mostly teenagers, it helped them try and break out of this neoconservative feelings that came out of the late 1980s. Now this music helped these people try and rage against the common authority of that time, and enables them to self-express and be themselves through this music. Alright folks, so about 20 years ago, in the early 1990s, Seattle grunge began to boom in popularity. This was the main sound of this time period. Now it began to boom in the late 1980s when bands like Nirvana started to form and started to create new music in their garages in the greater Seattle area. Also bands like Soundgarden and Pearl Jam wrote and organized songs and albums that helped capture the feel of this time period. These bands all came from our local city. Now these bands created songs that were like rock and roll, but they incorporated some other influences from some other bands in the late 70s. Two of these bands being called Mudhoney, also out of Seattle, and the Ramones. The frontman for the Seattle band Nirvana, named Kurt Cobain, had most of his inspiration from the band The Ramones. And that's where he started to develop some of his signature sound that Nirvana had at that time. Now this idea of self-expression was a big deal in the 1970s, but really began to boom once again in the early 90s through this kind of music that inspired a new type of fashion called the grunge look. Now it is moderately horrendous, where you tie flannels around your waist and wear ripped up pants and ripped up shirts. It doesn't look very good modern day, but that was the style back then. That all came from this music that Kurt Cobain, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden were all organizing. Not together, but separately, which is funny because all their sounds are a little bit similar, all because of this one genre, grunge. This created this entire subculture of people who were, in a sense, trying to oppose the main authority at that time period in society. Many people were kind of just the run-of-the-mill, goody-goody kind of people, but grunge kind of inspired this rebellious feel among teenagers in the common youth. Now, aside from Seattle rock and roll and Seattle grunge, we can also gather some information from boy bands that aren't so much grunge, but more are of the pop genre, along with bands that are mostly women's supergroups. Now, we can look at performers like Madonna and Mariah Carey, who had many hit singles that kind of, in a sense, inspired women to be a little more, I guess you could say, outgoing. And the genre of pop came from some female artists like Madonna and Mariah Carey. Now, they wrote music that had more of a happy tone rather than Seattle grunge. Now, this kind of almost inspired this kind of carefree feeling amongst audiences, which usually consisted of women and younger girls of that time. It kind of inspired this happy feeling, incorporating feelings of lust and a little bit of rebellion themselves, but in a different way. Also, we can look at a lot of the rap groups that started to come out of this time period too. There's the common ones you think of, like NWA and Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. I think that might be his name. And this was also ties in to the idea of wanting to rebel and rage against common authority. A lot of the lyrics in this rap music incorporates ideas of rebelling and going against what other people believe, going against the current. This all dates back to the American value of self-expression and wanting to be who we are as people and trying to express it in different ways rather than conforming to common society and doing our best to rage against conformity and do our best to be different.
Gary, now I know I was wrong. I messed up and now you're gone. Gary, I'm sorry.
A big craze in the 1990s is one of our favorite sports of all time. You know what that is? Surfing. Now, when we look at surfing, we look at some of the greatest surfers, maybe of all time, especially out of the decade, one of which being Wendy Botha. Wendy Botha won many titles as a surfer, and she is easily one of the most influential people of that decade for the sport because of how many titles she won and how some of her surfing styles were incorporated and helped influence other surfers in years past. Surfing introduced a bit of a carefree style of living, often done by what some people would call hippies, but I don't think that's quite so. Just people who wanted to be a little bit more carefree, wanted to have fun, and who wanted to quite literally ride the wave through the common day. Surfing became very popular in pop culture in the 90s, like when it is often incorporated into the TV show we know and love, SpongeBob, dog. SpongeBob. If it's included in SpongeBob, it's a legitimate sport, like surfing. Carefree people just trying to ride the wave, have a good time, including some of that great sense of balance, dog. Although this sport is loved by few, it is an acquired taste. Wendy Botha, easily one of the best surfers of all time, can really show you that through the way she rides the wave in her common day and common training.
new world of technology was absorbed and embraced into the 90s science culture, represented by the Human Genome Project that became accessible to the internet, represented everyone wanting to embrace who they are individually.
The Human Genome Project started on October 1st, 1990, where they mapped the entire genome of a human fly and a worm. There was lots of controversy following this topic, which we actually interviewed someone, and he had an opinion that was shared commonly back then, that they thought humans shouldn't be playing God so much and looking into their own genome. But with, controversial or not, they did it. And one main guy behind it was named Francis S. Collins, and he was the lead and was the director of the HGP, the Human Genome Project, which mapped 90% of all of the human genome of the human. But they also, of course, mapped the genome of a fly and a worm. And they mapped the fly and the worm, and they got some pretty interesting results out of it. Within those 3 billion codes, the general public figured out an immense amount of facts that they would have not known otherwise. Like, there's only 30 to 40,000 genes in the human genome, and everyone thought it was going to be this crazy number, but 30 to 40,000 really isn't that big to make up a person. That's what everyone was understanding. And another mind-boggling thing for them was that it was only 2 times as great as a fly or a worm. Nowadays, when you hear that, you're just like, oh, yeah, of course. It's just, we're not that different, like on a gene-based level. But back then, people, you see a little fly and you see a human, you'd think a human has like 1,000 times as much genes minimum. But nope, it's only 2 times. So that was a weird thing to wrap people's heads around. Even though there was some controversy, although some people thought it was interesting, and that's the main reason they made it available on the internet, and people could get their own genome figured out, and they could figure out stuff about their past and human migration patterns. It's just cutting edge things, and it was an exciting time to live in. And this, starting in 1990, this was going on all during the 90s, which also potentially started some other scientific breakthroughs, like Dolly the sheep, the first cloned animal of an adult of its species, which again had some controversy around, made cloning for humans illegal. But like I said, there was lots to figure out in this time period, and the Human Genome Project showed everyone's individuality and how they wanted to express themselves by figuring out who they actually are.
As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at
Bob Ross, the man, the myth, the legend, the dude with the afro. His show was booming during the 90s, until the old man unfortunately hit the sack on America's birthday in 1995, July 4th. The way he put the paintbrush onto canvas made it so amazing and memorizing to watch. I asked my parents, they lived during the 90s, about Bob Ross's show, The Joy of Art, and they said that it calmed them down to watch it. My mom said we'd put them in a trance when they put a cloud, and he said, this cloud looks lonely, let's give it a friend, or they beat the devil with the paintbrush. It was really poppin', you could say. The show also has a really good rating, with a 9.4 out of 10 on IMDb. which IMDb, if you don't know, is very hard on titles compared to others like Rotten Tomatoes. This show, well, so 9.4 is very high. It topped shows like The Walking Dead, which is probably the most watched current show right now. Topped others like The Office, Friends, which, you know, chances are you've seen one of the ones I've just listed. And Bob Ross's The Joy of Painting was only 0.1 behind Breaking Bad, which some could argue is the best show ever made. So, nowadays, there's certainly no way in HE double hockey sticks that a show about painting would air for 11 years. It would probably would have gone on longer because it only got cancelled because Bob Ross was about to die. So like, okay, we'll let you die in peace. Enjoy your less than 1 year retirement. So, what was it about the 90s that allowed a show like this to grow? You know, that's what I was wondering. Maybe people just wanted to see his luscious beard for 133 episodes straight. But, even though that's probably the case, the 90s were a period of self-expression that were reflected by the music, movie, science, and could be shown anywhere. The 90s were self-expressed. People wanted to express themselves. So, people like my parents and others that we interviewed were aware of the dominant Bob Ross. The librarians and dudes at QFC that we interviewed, they knew about him. It was definitely the most lasting art, and it definitely impacted the future. Because as you've been seeing in this clip, Bob Ross is live streaming on Twitch, a company owned by Amazon, two very new things. Playing Bob Ross, a guy who died 20 years ago. It's pretty crazy. So, I wanted to join the trend of Bob Ross and paint alongside the legend himself. So, let's get into it.
Got Bob Ross right there. I have a canvas right here. Paintbrushes right here. So, let's get it going, Bob. So I'm going to be painting called Mystic Mountain. 27 minutes. Let's see how long it takes me. Alright, so here we have it. It's all dried up. Still gonna grab it from the back. There it is. Got the mist. You got the what's it called? Mystic Mountain. So there's the Mystic Mountain. It's not that mystic. It's pretty bad actually. There's the water. I'm pretty fond of the clouds. I like my job. Now let's see how bad Bob. Well, I just realized that I stopped kind of early. But, you know, you can kind of see it. He had some better tools than me. If I had the same tools, Bob, you'd be out of a job.
And they don't stop coming. Fed to the rules and I hit the ground running. Didn't make sense not to live for fun. Your brain gets smart, but your head gets dumb. So much to do, so much to see. So what's wrong with taking the back street?
Good evening, everyone. The reaction of so many people today was, oh no, not again. Another high school, Columbine High in Littleton, Colorado this time, on the edge of Denver. It has been a horror. The spokesman for the local sheriff's office speaks of as many as 25 fatalities inside the school. The gunman, fellow students who rushed the school and opened fire for reasons we do not know yet.
In the late 90s, America was devastated from one of the most infamous tragedies to date. The Columbine shooting claimed the lives of many fellow students. All this was taken by the hands of two young teenagers by the name of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris. This was a shooting that impacted America the most, and is the most well-known because the shooters seemed normal just by looking at them in the hallway, and they took over a year in planning. The shooters consisted of an outgoing sports player and a social outcast. The death toll also happened to be among one of the most. There was such planning that the death toll wasn't as bad as it could be, considering that the guilty party set up two separate explosives in the cafeteria of the school that failed to go off. America has been known to bounce back from hell. For example, the Columbine shooting was one of the greatest tragedies, as I've stated. And America did not roll over and do nothing. We adapted and we came back stronger than ever. We've adapted and we've developed security, so this will never happen again. The terrible event that was the Columbine shooting has done a number of things, such as stereotyping Americans and establishing strict rules on school campus. Not all changes happen to be negative. Due to this event, security is now far more advanced and developed to stop things like this from happening again. For example, some schools have police officers around campus for the students' protection. Kamiak is one of those schools now. Other schools who have stricter security have installed metal detectors for an even extra advanced security measure. Other schools, such as Kamiak again, has installed multiple cameras around campus to figure out if something's about to go bad. Going back to how this defines us as Americans stereotypically, is that since this event happened in America, and after this event, 79% of all school shooters happen to be white males. This is very unfortunate this happens to be the case, but it is very much is. In summation, Americans have been defined in many ways, but one of the most leading and world-changing ways happens to be America's ability to adapt to the situation and come out on top no matter what. America has been dealt with some pretty nasty cards, but we've always managed to adapt and come out on top. Thank you. Now this is a story all about how Teresa's life turned upside down. Now let's take a visit right to Colorado. April 20th, 1999, two kids pulled up to Columbine. Jefferson County is born and raised. My parents basically spent most of my days planning it out and relaxing on pool and Food in the 90s was developed to adapt the busy schedules of adults. More specifically, the Lunchable was developed by Bob Dane, Tom Bailey, and Jeff James. And they developed little packed lunches so families could keep up with their new demanding jobs. Mothers and fathers that need all the time they can to produce and put in the hours at their jobs were the target market. This isn't just an example of food. This is an example of how Americans adapt. No matter how little the matter seems, America will never cease to adapt to create an easier lifestyle for the average American citizen. Another food that made life easier for Americans in the 90s are pizza rolls. Pizza rolls were developed for basically the same reason. The reason again being families who needed more time to do more stuff such as work or housework. Parents could just give their children this delicious meal and not have to worry about them. All in all, the 90s were pretty successful in making life easier for us. The rise of frozen foods began much earlier but remained strong throughout the 90s by developing new types of frozen food that we eat today. Schools began using these foods to feed children. This again relates to the adaptation of the United States. Some foods that you might find common at school that were developed in the 90s were the pizza that they serve here at our very own Kamiak. So, this shows why the adaptation of the United States shows no bounds and will even correct the smallest bit of error just to make our lives easier.
and nights are long. When you think you've had too much of this life to hang on. Well, everybody hurts, but sometimes everybody cries. Everybody hurts sometimes. Everybody hurts sometimes. So hold on, hold on, hold on, hold
About an hour and a half ago. We've had no official explanation. Police estimate some 300 or 400 people. They just got out and walked. God. We've gotten confirmation.
The greatest innovation in transportation in the 90s would have to be the revival of the electric car. As Americans, this defines us as always looking for ways around problems by creating something new. So in the 1990s, there was the California Air Resources Board passed, also known as CARB, they began to push for the Clean Air Agency started to push for more fuel-efficient, lower emissions vehicles, with the ultimate goal of being to move to zero emissions vehicles such as electric vehicles. In response, the automakers developed electric models including Chrysler TEV and the Ford Ranger EV, pickup truck, GM EV1, and the S10 EV pickup. Now, these electric cars weren't very popular, but it was definitely the revival. In earlier times, there was other vehicles that were used using electricity. Like in Paris, there was a man riding a bicycle powered by an electric battery in the back. Now, the real true pioneers in the revival of this was definitely Honda with the EV Plus, which was one of the first electric cars introduced in the 90s for the revival of, obviously, electric cars. After the public protests by EV drivers and groups upset by the repossession of their cars, Toyota offered the last 328 RAV4s for sale to the general public during 6 months up until November 22nd. So the issue was a lot of these cars was that there wasn't really a conventional need, it wasn't a very popular idea to go home and plug your car into the wall, and also they were a little bit more expensive. They weren't exactly hybrids, they're generally fully electric. And I feel like Honda at the time was a real pioneer, and everyone started jumping on the bandwagon of bringing back electric cars like Ford and Toyota. And I'd have to say the biggest issue with the cars was just really not being popular. People favoring muscle cars and just combustible engines.
If I should stay, I would only be in your way. So I'll go, but I know
The Gulf War was a war between the U.S. coalition army and Iraqi's dictator Saddam Hussein. Now let's talk about a little bit about what happened before the war and what led up to it. So in the 1980s, there was something called the Iraqi-Iran War, which in turn, Saddam borrowed resources from Kuwait, not resources specifically, but money, oil, to fight the Iranians, and well, he couldn't pay that back. So he tried finding excuses to blame on the Kuwait. For example, they blamed Kuwait for drilling in their oil fields, which they asked for a $10 billion payout, $10 billion payout, and Kuwait only gave them $9 billion, which made them really furious. And Kuwait went over their oil production quota, and that was seen as an act of aggression and caused Iraq to lose billions of dollars. So after figuring all this, after just coming across all this, Iraq decided they wanted to invade Kuwait because they were screwing them over, and that's all they were doing. So Saddam consulted the U.S. ambassador, and the U.S. ambassador told them they have no opinion in the matter. They would not like to be involved in a war in the Middle East. And 2 days later, Saddam Hussein invaded and occupied Kuwait. And this was what started a chain of events known as the Gulf War. After Kuwait was taken, the U.S. deployed troops at the Saudi border to stop Iraqi forces from heading over there and taking more land, because they were scared at this point, which was known as Operation Desert Shield. Another thing that led to more events that happened after this was the UN putting strict sanctions on Iraq. And after these sanctions, Saddam gave his demands. Israeli troops withdraw from Arab lands. Iraq have access to the Persian Gulf and a favorable deal with the U.S. regarding oil. After these demands, the U.S. responded by saying they have 2 days to get out of there, or else they're going in. And in 1991, January 13, 1991, Desert Storm began, in which the U.S. forced their way into Kuwait to take it back, and then Iraq, which was mostly just bombing and taking out their anti-air. Saddam ordered a full retreat after the 2 days of U.S. coalition armies storming Kuwait and Iraq. And while he was retreating, his men set fire to the oil fields, costing Kuwait billions of dollars. After this, Saddam called a ceasefire, and he stayed in power until 2003, when the U.S. came back and had an invasion over in Iraq. Many new technologies were found during this war. For example, stealth bombers, which were used to hover over
background hero.
Started dropping bombs without being shot by anti-air, and Tomahawk cruise missiles were shot from battleships to hit key targets in the war. Now, something we're going to talk about is the Maslow's theory, which was just needs of people. Number one being physiological needs, which was hunger, sleep, thirst. These were actions or feelings that really guided people to what they were going to do next. For example, if you're hungry, you're going to go out and hunt. If you're thirsty, you'd go to the lake and drink. If you were cold, you'd go in the cave and make a fire. The second stage was safety, and just safety, really, which was to build resources, protect yourself, just being careful in general, and finding a sense of safety that you can be comfortable with. The third stage was love and belonging, having someone love you emotionally, belonging to a faction, a family, a club, anything like that. The fourth stage was self-esteem, esteem to be someone, to feel secure around people in society, and other things to just make you feel good. The fifth one was self-actualization, which was the last stage you reached, which was being relaxed, accepting yourself, and really knowing who you are.
Dala tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, que tu cuerpo es para dar la alegría y cosas buenas. Dala tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, Macarena. Dala tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, que tu cuerpo es para dar la alegría y cosas buenas. Dala tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, Macarena. Macarena tiene un novio que se llama de apellido Vitorino, y en la jura de bandera del muchacho se la dio con dos amigos. Macarena tiene un novio que se llama de apellido Vitorino, y en la jura de bandera del muchacho se la dio con dos amigos.
Only 90s kids remember this. Sound familiar? Today, clickbait upon clickbait article lists various fads surrounding the 90s. Arriving before a great shift in technology, 90s fads continue to serve nostalgia and fashion today. Included in 90s fads is the plethora of toys. Many of these toys took tried and true models, but added a 90s twist. Stuffed animals still lived in the 90s. Specifically Beanie Babies, stuffed with plastic pellets instead of soft material like cotton. And Doodle Bear, a washable teddy bear designed to be drawn on. Through these, though, some toys took greater advantage of rising technology in the 90s. Nerf guns used basic pneumatics to propel darts, but presented itself as revolutionary. They relied on pumping air into a chamber and releasing the pressure with the trigger, shooting the dart. Tamagotchi took digital toys by storm with a digital pet and 3-button input. Properly pronounced Tamagotchi, today the company continues its 90s trek with technology, adding infrared communication to newer models. And of course, video games continue to grow in popularity. Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue were released on February 27, 1996 in the US and sparked Pokemon fever in the school world. It contained advancements in communication with a link cable to trade Pokemon. Combining a technological spark on the Game Boy with the classic trading card game, Pokemon defined the 90s shift to a more technological, electronic-based toy industry. Alongside these toys, a simple innovation to a stuffed animal grew tremendously popular. Tickle Me Elmo was a stuffed version of Sesame Street star Elmo, but included a battery box, speakers, and a pressure sensor. When children squeezed the toy, Elmo would reply laughing. Though part of this toy's popularity was associated with the TV show, many 90s kids reminisce about other shows. Walking to school, it wouldn't be uncommon to spot kids rapping the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song. Spread verbally, this fad impressed onlookers in this area of hip-hop. Granting the show popularity, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air ran for 148 episodes. Alongside cartoons such as Rugrats, Doug, and Animaniacs, 90s kids felt a sense of connection to these shows. And who else could forget Will Smith's outrageous outfits shown in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? He rocked tilted caps, jogging suits, various tennis shoes, and even denim on denim. Alongside these outrageous outfits, Will Smith helped define 90s fads with his hip-hop and his TV show. Overall, the 90s showed the American need to jump on new advancements, technology molded with entertainment. The thirst for something new retained to the past. With such rapid change, America feels attached to these past fads.
Dala tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, que tu cuerpo es para dar la alegría y cosas buenas. Dala tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, Macarena. Dala tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, que tu cuerpo es para dar la alegría y cosas buenas. Dala tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, Macarena. Macarena tiene un novio que se llama de apellido Vitorino. Y en la jura de bandera del muchacho se la dio con dos amigos. Macarena tiene un novio que se llama de apellido Vitorino. Y en la jura de bandera del muchacho se la dio con dos amigos.
Kickstarting a scandalous life, Bill and his wife Hillary grew involved in an investment with the Whitewater Development Corporation, planning to subdivide 230 acres of undeveloped land along the south bank of the White River, Arkansas. The business flopped when interest rates skyrocketed. The main conviction revolved around a $300,000 loan to Susan McDougall, co-founder of Whitewater, which her husband James misused. Formerly William Jefferson Clinton, he and his vice president, Al Gore, succeeded George Bush and Dan Quayle for the remainder of the 90s. Shortly after entering office, controversy blew up when Vincent W. Foster, a deputy White House counsel, committed suicide on July 20, 1993. He handled issues regarding Whitewater for the Clintons. Ford also grew anxious regarding an event called Travelgate, where in May 1993, shortly after the Clintons entered the White House, 7 White House employees were fired. Fearing they were fired to make room for cronies, Bill Clinton was investigated by the Justice Department, special prosecutors, and congressional panels. No charges were brought. Although, out of the controversies surrounding Bill Clinton, his sex scandals became the most infamous. Allegations first arose when Paula Jones, an Arkansas state employee, charged Clinton for exposing himself to her at the Excelsior Hotel in Little Rock, Arkansas. Later in the trial, James's lawyers subpoenaed women who Clinton may have had affairs with. One of these women was Monica Lewinsky. Monica was a White House intern. Clinton initially denied the charges, leading to the famous line, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." However, today, Clinton states, "I did something for the worst possible reason, just because I could." The Jones case cooled down with a lack of evidence. However, when Monica provided investigators with a semen-stained dress, the case gained speed. Kenneth W. Starr was the independent counsel for Bill Clinton, who investigated Vince Foster's suicide and the Whitewater case. He concluded in his Starr report that Clinton committed perjury. Other evidence provided included recordings of a conversation between Monica and Linda R. Tripp, her friend and co-worker. After discussing her relations with Bill, Linda secretly released the tapes. These were brought before a grand jury and led to the impeachment vote in 1998. Impeachment hearings were initiated by the 105th United States Congress on December 19, 1998. In the House of Representatives, 4 articles of impeachment were voted on: perjury to a grand jury, obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and a second court of perjury in the Jones case. The first case of perjury and obstruction of justice passed with 228 to 206 and 221 to 212 votes. The latter failed with 205 to 229 and 148 to 285 votes. When the trial reached the Senate, politicians argued on Clinton's worthiness to be president. Overall, Democrats viewed Clinton's behavior as irrelevant to whether he would be an effective leader. Republicans mentioned how Clinton's perjury disqualifies him for presidency. The votes eventually failed to meet a 2/3 majority, with a 50-45 vote for perjury and a 50-50 split for obstruction of justice. The varying views on morality held by those politicians affect everyone today, with greater polarization than ever regarding morality. Since 1994, those with consistently conservative or liberal values has risen from 10% to 21% in 2014. These views are also affecting relations, as many Americans say most of their friends share their political views. This has even risen to a greater height. In 2014, those with very unfavorable opinions about the opposing side grew 26% in Republicans and 22% in liberals since '94. Finally, regarding the self-interest theory, this was social and political. Politics and social views on morality commingled. The stakeholders, Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky, and America had a say. Bill Clinton initially held the power, initiating meetings, but Congress later held the power in impeaching Clinton and bringing the truth to light, where the conflict resolved.
What else do we need to do for this project?
We need somebody to interview people about tonight.
Yeah, that's a good. Which one of us should do it? I don't want to do that. That'd be embarrassing. Okay, how about we just draw? So whoever, we need someone charming. So if everyone in the class likes them, then everyone else is probably like him. Intelligent, so they can give them thought-provoking questions.
And handsome, because we need
Very handsome.
physical appeal.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Carlos! AP guy, why'd you get that?
Bro, come on, this is airhead.
Let's go. We have you, bro. Let's go to his house. Yeah, go to his house.
Get out of here. Got the keys. What do you want?
That's not Carlos. Get away. Where's Carlos? You sure this is where Carlos lives?
I don't know, man. I think he lives around somewhere around these parts, man. I say we go back out in the middle of our
We've made it.
Alright, we're in the woods.
We're in the deep brush. Or the bush.
Carlos usually hangs out around here, boys. I'm not here.
Oh, he's been here. That's a Carlos Markin if I've ever seen one before.
He's in the shape of a C.
Oh
See
my-
that? See this right here? Carlos was here.
Carlos was here. Well, okay, when you see him, hit him in the head.
Hit him in the head?
Because he's not really compliant around these times. Oh, you see that? See that shoe?
I found him, man! Alright. We knocked him unconscious. Now he's stuck in the trunk. Now
That ought to do.
Now
That
it's time
ought
for
to
him to do his
Oh,
interview.
I saw a twitch. You might want to hit him
we better
again.
close it now.
Initial reaction when you heard about the Bill Clinton scam?
It's pretty sick. Yeah, just had a real sinking feeling. I was disappointed in our president that he would do such a thing, and I think the biggest deal is, so it was real sad because it affected, I think, many.
What was your favorite fad during the 90s?
Everyone's email address was at AOL.com.
I can dig it.
What was your favorite music genre during the 90s?
Pop music.
Pop?
Big fan of Michael Jackson. Loved Michael Jackson. Still love his music.
To rap, like the message in rap is, I have all this stuff. Same thing with country music actually. I have a daughter, I have a horse, I have a farm, I have a nice truck, I have all this stuff. And rap music is, I have all the money, I have all this, I have all that. You don't have it. It's like a brag war. But then hip hop music was basically this. Yo, me and my buddy, we both like this girl, we both want this girl, but we can't get the girl. Damn.
What's something memorable from sports in the 90s?
The Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl, then they went to another one, lost it to the Broncos, and Brett Favre, they just kept Brett Favre on the team forever and ever after that, but he never even got the Super Bowl again.
Did you ever have interest in the Human Genome Project?
Yes, in fact, I was really excited when National Geographic started offering the human genome, people to have their DNA analyzed, and I did that. Found out some interesting things about my own background.
I'm not sure my values, I'm not sure if we should play God so much.
Have you ever painted alongside Bob Ross?
Bob Ross. No, I just watched his videos.
How did you feel about the Gulf Wars in the 90s?
Well, I have to tell you, when in 1990, when we marched into Desert Storm, when we did Desert Storm, I was home with a newborn baby boy, watching it minute by minute. And it was very unsettling, and of course, having a new baby boy and thinking about his future. It was pretty stark.
How were reports different in the 90s than today?
Airports. You're talking about the TSA.
Yep.
Today, the biggest difference is that they want you to walk through a big microwave chamber.
All the security that is there now was not there, and we would like to go early to the airport and have dinner somewhere and then say goodbye to whoever dropped us off. Behind those now.
React to Columbine.
Again, yeah, I was born in '91, so I must have been 6 or 7 years old when that happened. So I wasn't really aware about it. But about the Second Amendment, I generally believe in the Second Amendment.
I had 2 children in school, so we sent them to school every day, knowing that life is uncertain, but we have to keep on doing it. You can't let it stop you. And I think it raised my awareness, and I paid more attention to what was going on around me and with the other students at school that my kids hung out with.
Popsicles, orange popsicles that were shaped like cartoon characters.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Just certain cereals when it was on certain flavor dishes.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, man. What's your name?
Donald.
All right,
Thank you, Donald.
Man. Thank you, man. That really helped out.
Pizza!
Pizza.
Of course!
Always
Love
pizza.
pizza!
That's an easy
All
one.
right. I think that's good.
All right.
Alrighty.
The new world of technology was absorbed and embraced into the 90s science culture, represented by the Human Genome Project.
Start recording when you cut. Whatever the biggest disaster in the 90s was the Gulf War, which included over 30 countries in the U.S. coalition. What's so funny? Why you
Who are you laughing at? Daily and nightly. Will it ever stop? Yo,
The biggest
turn off the lights and I blow to the extreme. I rock a mic like a handle, light up a stage and watch it jump like a crazy. Speaker that booms your brain like a poison. When I play a dope melody, anything less than the best. I wanna go home. I wanna believe it. You better can't wait. You better hit bullseye. The kids don't play. If there was a problem, yo, I'll solve it. Check out the hook while my DJ revolves it.
New world of technology was
Carlos, stop!
Why?
I'm just